Haters, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Les doy la bienvenida nuevamente aquí al canal, conmigo su host El Diablo. Les doy la bienvenida nuevamente a su canal de El Hater. En esta ocasión tenemos el honor de tener como invitado, como huésped aquí a Emil Hansen, quien es el guitarrista y la voz de la banda Terminalist, una banda estadounidense danesa que actualmente radica en Copenhague. La banda es una banda que mezcla elementos del black metal y el thrash metal y ellos llaman a esa mezcla Hyper Trash, una banda que fue fundada en el año 2018 y que lanzará su segundo álbum de estudio titulado The Crisis as Condition el día 8 de septiembre a través del sello Indisciplinarian. Ya hicimos una reseña de ese trabajo, la cual vamos a dejar los links por aquí arriba para que puedan checarla. So, Emil, how are you? Welcome to El Hater. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, man. And we are here in this interview because we like to add content that really matters, that helps to spread the word about the metal culture in Spanish speaking metalheads and in Spanish speaking countries. And what a better way to let the people in this side of the world to know a little more about the persons, the people that are making the music come true these days. So, man, if you are ready, let's go with the first question that was formulated by nothing less and nothing more than Jim, the bass player and the founder member of bands like Rotting Christ, Barathron, and nowadays he is playing with his project called Yoth Iria. The project will be visiting Mexico in the month of September. And the question he asked for you was, what is your favorite or what band do you think is the best black metal band from Greece?
Yes, black metal band from Greece. Not too sure if I know too many black metal bands from Greece. Actually, I can think of one. So let's just go with Rotting Christ.
Rotting Christ, of course, man. It's a band. It's a pillar, one of the foundations of black metal as we know it today, and obviously, it's a very great influence to all the people who plays metal in that beautiful country and all over the world.
Hmm.
You have another influence in black metal. It doesn't matter if it's not from Greece. Do you have another black metal band that have influenced you powerfully?
I actually think that when it comes to the black metal scene, I don't necessarily think as much in the sort of unique bands. I think more of black metal as a sound and as an aesthetic that you can sort of pull some use from when writing music.
Yeah.
I can say that probably the black metal band that I've been listening to the most in recent years would be Black, or MGLA from Poland. Despite them having some questionable politics, maybe they have released some incredible records, and actually the record exercises in futility was actually one of the inspirations, musically speaking, for some of the stuff that we do in Terminalist on this new album of ours. So they could be pointed out for sure.
Right, man. Definitely, I will be taking out that band, and all the haters, I think, will do the same. Um, the next question I got for you is this one. On your debut album, The Great Acceleration, the sound of the band and the lyrics show a kind of luminosity, even some sort of optimism. But with the crisis as condition, we are completely on the opposite side of that spectrum. Why such an abrupt change of feeling and approach in the band's musical vision?
Well, it's a very good question, and I might wanna challenge sort of the premise a little bit. I think it's
Yeah,
interesting if you found the first album, The Great Acceleration, to be optimistic. I mean, I guess there are some hopeful elements maybe,
yeah,
I still find it to be quite pessimist in nature and in tone and in the overall message, which would be that we are destroying the earth and must seek out
yeah,
other planets because it is necessary. But the sort of the technological advancements, the war machine and the acceleration and the speed is still with us. So I mean, with the destructive side of technology is always present and will always be used in destructive ways as well. That was sort of what the theme on the first one was, and I mean, it was a sci-fi, science fiction album, like we know them. There are many sci-fi thrash albums out there, and we wanted to make one as well.
yeah,
But when we had to come up with a new concept for for the new record, I found it hard to write about something speculative taking place in space, because I actually found that our present times are way more interesting. And I also think that with the many different crises that we face, both on national and local and regional, but especially also on global levels, I think there's a lot to take from, and a lot a lot of subjects to dive into as well. And I think that especially if you're a thrash band, the thrash genre, the thrash scene has always had this kind of social political commentary or edge to it. So it seems that it would be a proper way to make a record number two about our present times. And since they are not looking too good, if I may say so,
yeah.
then that affects the overall vibe and the message on the album, which is quite pessimistic and hopeless in nature, unfortunately, if you will.
Yeah, man, I think you're right when you rephrase my premise. Yeah, it's not maybe optimistic, but yeah, totally it has an element of hope that it is born out of the damage of the destruction and all the evolutionary things in technology that we have done as a human race. And yeah, I think you just spotted, you answered the question totally what I was expecting, I think.
Well, thank you.
Man, the next question is this one. The band is young. Terminalist is a young band. And within its first 5 years, the lineup has suffered but one single change. So that tells me that you are close. Where do you know your bandmate from? Were you in school together or something like that?
No, I actually, I mean, I know the guitarist Morten from way back through some common friends. We had a one big common friend group that we all went to a big festival called Roskilde Festival here in Denmark each year. And I also through friends met the drummer Frederik, and eventually we actually moved in together and shared an apartment, shared a space. And since I played the guitar, but never really had been in a sort of, I had never played in my own band at least, and he played the drums, seemed sort of a little too obvious, to start playing together. So we did, and we got Morten to join us. And the hard part was then to find a bass player, because for some reason it was really hard to find a metal bass player in Copenhagen. At least it was for us.
All over the world, believe me.
Yeah. So Kalle, our American element from Texas, who lives and resides in Denmark, in Copenhagen. I accidentally met him one night, at a bar, many years ago, and we became Facebook friends. And I sort of recalled that he had a nice growl, and he knew his metal. So I eventually just contacted him and heard if he was up for playing the bass instead of the guitar, and he was. So that's how the four of us got together, and we've been playing since 2020, I believe, in this particular lineup.
It sounds like it was just knowing the right people, being in the right places.
Well, yeah, but it takes time. It takes time as well to find somebody that you can vibe with and play with too. So yeah.
First of all, someone you can live with, because that has to be very, very difficult too.
It worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, I see you almost when every day I wake up. You're the last person I see before I go to bed, and then we pass time in the rehearsal room, hours and hours.
Yeah.
Making it work, it must have been hard at the beginning.
I mean, to begin with, it was actually just very, very kind of hobby oriented. I mean, me and Freddie, we just played some different covers and just sort of to see if we could make it sound all right. So we played some Megadeth, and we played some Shira, we played some Lamb of God, and some of the more groovy stuff that he was very much into on the drums. And we didn't actually stay together for that long after we sort of created the foundation for the band. I mean, we didn't live together for that long. So for the larger part of the band's lifetime, we have not been seeing each other as the first thing in the morning and last in the evening. We've
very healthy.
Seeing in band practices.
Great, man. Great. The next question for you is this one. To a lot of metalheads, sports are something that they don't enjoy so much. We both live in countries where football is the most popular sport. Do you like football or any other particular sport?
Nope.
You are not a sports person.
Not really. Next question.
That's funny because I think that's something that happens almost in every country with metalheads. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like when you're 12 or 13 or something like that, you sort of pick a side. I mean, do you want to be engaged in music and arts or something like that, or do you want to be one of the guys running around on the field, kicking a ball around, or doing gymnastics, or being healthy and athletic? And that was never really my thing. Way more fun to listen to rock music and drink beer, right? So that was my calling.
Yeah, man. I mean, back in the day, maybe 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, it was one thing or another. Or you're a musician, a rocker, a metalhead, or you're a guy, a footballer, or a basketballer, or any kind of sport. Nowadays, it's more common that people tend to do both in some places, not as normal as being a part of one or the other. But yeah, I can totally understand what you're saying. When I was a kid, I was the same because or whether I was with the guys who play football and all the afternoon they spend the time kicking the ball, or I was in my room listening to CDs, cassettes, some records, and the other kids make fun of me because I was listening to that kind of music, and that is kind of a problem that I assume many folks have had on in those days, and I am sure many young metalheads have in this moment. Do you think?
I think that I think that most of us can probably relate to what you're saying. I mean, I recall when I was, I mean, when I started getting into heavy metal, we had one we had a music class in my public public school,
Yeah,
and I think we were probably 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And our music teacher advised us to bring a CD for next week, and we're gonna listen to some of this, and we're gonna try to digest what it's about and how it's interesting or fun or whatever. And I brought Iowa by Slipknot because that was my favorite CD at the time, and I guess it was still fairly new around that time. That was the beginning of the new millennium, and man, I mean, people equal shit blasting out of the speakers, and all these little kids that were just holding their ears. And one of the girls even had to leave the room because she thought it was so terrible. That's when I really knew that this was my
yeah.
kind
This
of
is me scaring
um,
people.
something actually changed during the years because for a long time it was something that only me and one of my friends were into. So we sort of had this hard rock heavy metal interest that we shared. Um, but at some point, it actually turned out that some of the other guys, at least in class, found it interesting enough to sort of build at least some kind of interest or identity around it. And I actually had one of the footballers, one probably the guy who was the best at playing football in my class. I recall he had this, what do you call it? The small thing where you store pencils, and you bring it
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
every
I
day.
know what you're talking about. I don't know how it is called, but I know what you're talking about.
And he actually wrote. He tried to duplicate the Iced Earth logo on his pencil case here. So he
Oh,
walked around, looking like he was really into Iced Earth when it was actually me who was probably the bigger fan. But it sort of affected some of the other guys, which was a little bit interesting. So it seemed to sort of become a more shared interest over years. I don't know how it is for young people today because I mean we talk about in the age of streaming and of course the internet and pretty much the whole history of culture and art being in some way or another searchable for you and
yeah,
easy to find on Google or YouTube or Spotify or whatever. It seems like some of the old barriers have been broken,
yeah,
and I know that in, for example, in academia, but also in when you make target audiences for companies, there's talk about a new kind of consumer, which is the cultural omnivore. So instead of the old distinct differences between, for example, someone who listens to classical, and someone who listens to rock, and someone who listens to pop, you see a new kind of group emerging that can sort of navigate between all these different kinds of genres and expressions quite seamlessly. So it's not really a thing of it's not really a thing that is as divisive as it or as divided as it once was. But of course, I mean, if you're 14 years old and you have a class room where you're, I guess you could still be the odd one out for listening to heavy metal, but that's fine too.
Yeah, man, totally. That's fine. Look at us. We were those kids, and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. You
Doing
will turn
just fine.
out to be something as well, be someone at some point. So keep on, you know.
Yeah, man. Um, and the last question I got for you is the next one. As we were talking before, society is a main theme in all of your lyrics. You guys criticize it in a very sharp manner in your next album, whether it is from an individual point of view or from a collective one. What do you think is the most important problem that society has today?
The most important problem, I mean, it's hard to pin down on one. But I mean, if we are to discuss one issue more than others, then I personally believe that the overall threat from accelerating climate change is the number one issue that we have to face right now. And one of the reasons why I am bringing that up instead of, for example, I don't know, global social inequality or the war in Ukraine or the political polarization and division and all that. One of the reasons why I'm bringing up climate change is sort of that it sort of integrates all the other subjects and crises underneath itself. I mean, climate change sort of spans over this incredible amount of posing different problems and threats. I mean the overall emissions are still going up, even though there was a bit of a halt during the COVID crisis and during the lockdowns taking place a lot of places around the world. But emissions are still on the rise. Fossil fuels are still being dug out. The climate is going fucking crazy, and we are seeing temperature records being broken constantly. The last 8 years have been the warmest on record, and I'm pretty sure that taking into account this year's extreme temperatures that we're gonna see it, we are living through the 9th right now as well, and there's no sort of there's no end to this. I mean, even if we curb the emission of greenhouse gases right now, we will still have to face the consequences for maybe a couple of decades now.
It seems too late. It seems too late.
It's hard to be hopeful about it, at least in my opinion. But actions are being taken and measures are sort of there's a lot of stuff going on, but there's also a lot of backlash and those tensions that derive from trying to divert away from fossil fuels onto renewables or nuclear power or whatever you sort of believe in is the proper way to make the sort of energy transition. Still poses a lot of different problems that are incredibly hard to face and incredibly hard to sort of navigate it. I mean, we're still seeing that it's the global north that are sort of the major polluters and emitters, and the global south that is paying the price, or sort of taking the hardest beatings so far. And if we really come to a point where the New York Times wrote that by the year 2100 or 2100, we might see 20% of the global land surface being inhabitable because of extreme temperatures. I mean, if 1/5 of the world is becoming inhabitable, where the fuck will these people go to? And they will go north. And we don't have a really good history of being very accommodating to immigrants, at least not in recent years. So we are seeing, we are facing some major challenges on a global scale that threaten to sort of undermine our whole societies in the long run. And that is one major fight that we need to address and fight right now as well, as a lot of people are. And we are sort of trying to create some music in the light of this, or in the shadow of this.
More in the shadow. Yeah, totally.
In the shadow of this incredible threat that seems hard to overcome. So we're just trying to make the best of it, I assume, even though it's pretty fucking hard from time to time.
Yeah, man, it is true, because in these days there are, I can't even believe it. There are people who are negationists about this, who claim that the climate change is just a fantasy, a big scheme, a plot. The ones that say that the earth is flat and all that stuff. And it's very hard to see how people don't let the reality get to them, and they prefer just to do nothing and keep thinking that everything will be all right because God will it, or I don't know, the companies have the power to change the world in the instant they want to do it. And man, that's not, that's just not right. It's a fantasy they are living in, and there are a lot of people who think like that. And if those people were aware of the reality they are living in, whether they want it or not, maybe it will be easier to get a real change in the big scheme of things in the world. I mean, changing their practice, the daily practice, like separate the trash. I don't know. Don't take a bath that lasts more than 10 minutes, 7 minutes, not half an hour. I don't know, man. Don't use your car every day. If you are going to work in a suburban and you're a single person, don't be a dick. Maybe share your car with some neighbors, with some coworkers, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people who simply don't care or don't believe these things, and it's just mind blowing, don't you think?
Yeah, but still at some point I can still I can still understand, where these where this kind of mindset is coming from, because I mean climate change and the ways to address it and are, I mean, it's an incredibly complex and also abstract composition of many different problems. And
Yeah.
I mean, the science is very clear, but the measures that we have to take are not necessarily very clear, because there's a million ways to do it. I mean, one thing is quite it's quite, there's a lot of consensus, that we need to stop burning off fossil fuels, and that's also,
Yeah, man. Yeah. And the
I mean,
companies are one of the main guilties
we
of all of this.
have a transition away from that. But exactly how we are going to do that is a major political question, right? An economic one as well. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I mean, it doesn't matter one fucking bit if you take a shower that is 7 minutes instead of 30 minutes, or if you share your car or don't. I mean, you can take the bus, but if what is being decided and carried out politically through the political system is still more highways for all the cars, then it doesn't matter if you as an individual sell your own car and go by bus instead, because we will still politically see the old sort of world expanding and the fossil fuel economy being dominated.
Keeps growing.
So I mean, in order to, of course, we have to make an effort to change people's minds So they become aware of these very complex, but also very frightening global issues and consequences. But it's also it's not just enough, to change people's minds. I mean, you also need to see some action. And of course, there's something that you could do as an individual, but there is also a lot that needs to be addressed on a more structural, systemic level. I mean, if you want to change the system, then it requires a systemic change, right? So in reality, we have to start somewhere and we have to end somewhere completely different. And a lot of measures are being taken right now, and energy transition is underway, and there is a lot of skepticism against climate change that is not being taken as seriously as it once did. And that's probably one major victory in the overall discussion on climate change. That, I mean, and we've been discussing this for longer than I'm old, right? I mean, I'm 32, and I believe that it was in 1988 that you had a Senate hearing where a NASA scientist, James Hansen, he spoke about climate change for the first time to the United States Congress. That's sort of when global warming becomes a sort of what can you say, a subject or a notion that you talk about in public discourse and opinion, and a lot of the what can you say, the outright denial and skepticism from the 90s that was often being funded by oil companies, fossil fuel companies. A lot of that skepticism and denial is not present anymore. I mean, and that's one major victory. So the most dangerous kind of skepticism that we see now is not the one that sort of denies that climate change is happening, because it is, and everyone can
feel it,
can see it and can feel it by now. The most dangerous kind of skepticism and denialism is the one that says that we don't have to do anything, that it doesn't matter what we do, or it doesn't really play a role anymore. I mean, that we just have to sort of adapt and see how it goes. That kind of attitude is not really it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, that's just outright what can you say? I mean, digging your own grave by now. I mean, so I guess there still is some kind of hope, and I guess that I hope that some people, when they listen to this record, that they also want to sort of engage a little bit with the concept and the lyrics and the themes, and maybe try to think a little bit about what the fuck is going on in the world at the moment. But I mean, it is still a very pessimistic record, and it is very hopeless. But sometimes you can actually use that as an outlet and still come out with something positive in the end. And I hope that is possible for any potential listener out there as well.
Yeah, man, definitely. All the pessimism, the realism, the lyrics even have a little token of cynicism, but are very true, are very honest, and they are clearly a call out to wake up to many people, and individually and collectively. And that's one of the things that I like more of your next album, The Crisis as Condition, because it's very true. It feels true. It feels actual. It feels like, man, this is about me. This is about my country. This is about my neighborhood. This is about our continent, our people. And it's not just a fantasy from somewhere, from some country in another part of the world. No, it is a theme. Those are topics that concerns to all of us because they are actual, they are true, they are hard to see, but we have to see them. And that a band so young are talking about it in this way with such a brutal approach, with such a brutal honesty, it's very refreshing, and I thank you guys for it.
Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for taking your time to take it in and digest it and absorb the whole our sort of slap of cynicism on this record. I mean, we are of course very proud of it, but it wouldn't feel the same way if people like you didn't listen to it and engage with it. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, man. And those are all the questions I have for you. But before we sum up, do you think about the question that you would like to ask to the next guest in here in Conversation from the Underground?
I actually did, and I thought that in contrary to the kind of music and messages that we delve in as Terminalist, we should probably start to we should probably try to finish on a lighter note. So my question to the next one you will be interviewing would be, if you are at a party and someone invites you to dance, what song should be playing in order for you to get up and dance? It can be anything, you know, but it would be good if the answer is not a heavy metal
song. Yeah, man, that's a good question. Very fun. I'm sure we will have fun answering that in the next interview. So, Emil, thanks a lot for your time. I mean, it's an honor to have an artist and a fellow metalhead here in our hater. And as we say before, the sophomore album from the band will be released through Indisciplinarian. It will be released in the next couple of days. I mean, it is in the September the 8th, called The Crisis as Condition. So go and check it out. All the links will be in the description of this video. So, Emil, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mario.
Haters, eso es todo lo que tenemos por este video de Conversaciones desde el Inframundo con Emil Hansen de la banda Terminalist. Espero que les haya gustado. Si fue así, no olviden apoyarnos con su like y apoyar a la banda y al sello consumiendo su material de fuentes oficiales. Nos estamos viendo en el siguiente video. Por favor, haters, cuídense mucho. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.